one of the big points in Food Matters, or one of the stimuli that caused me to write it, one of the catalysts, was this UN report called Livestock's Long Shadow, which revealed that in their estimate, the UN's estimate, and this has been backed up by Scientific American recently, 18% of all greenhouse gases are produced by industrial livestock production. And the only sector of the economy that produces more greenhouse gas than that is energy production. So that is a lot. So and it's almost as simple as saying the amount, if you eat less meat, your carbon footprint is smaller. In fact, it is as simple as saying that. So it's an infinitesimal amount, but it's infinitesimal along the same lines as using a more efficient car, more efficient light bulbs, recycling, so on down the line.
And the argument would be the same. Maybe I can't make all that much of a difference, but if we all do this, then we can make a big difference.
Well,
but you're not suggesting we all become vegetarians.
No, I'm not suggesting anyone become a vegetarian. In fact, I would argue against it, and maybe we get to that in a second. Just to talk about individual actions and responsibilities, I'm a person who's in favor of government and intervention in many walks of life, but I also feel like there are limits to the government's power, and the government is not always as effective as we'd like it to be. And so when there are things that we can actually make happen by ourselves, why not?
Mm-hmm. But you do say in this book that the government has not only been ineffective, but in some cases had been complicit.
Well, the USDA, and this has been well discussed, I'm sure, on your show and elsewhere, but the USDA has had a dual role in the United States. On the one hand, it's supposed to advocate good eating and protect consumers and so on. On the other hand, it's supposed to promote the agricultural industry of the United States, and those two things are often at odds. So although there are many well-intentioned people in the USDA, I think that they're probably outnumbered by the people who promote agribusiness, and that's been the winning side from every perspective. Even more overwhelming, I think, has been the unbelievable marketing campaign on the part of Big Food, or whatever you want to call it, that started, when you and I were young, in the post-war years, and has just not let up. And no matter what someone like me or Michael Pollan says, or no matter what you read, you are within 100 yards of a McDonald's billboard right now. You're within 100 feet of a can of Coke, and these things are just always there and always hammering away at you that you need them badly. We go a long way toward protecting the food industry and letting it sell what it wants to sell. On the other hand, we have an adequate amount of food in this country for the most part. It's really a question, I think, of distribution and what kind of food it is. Look, it's not black and white. We're not starving. There is an adequate amount of food. We haven't killed the earth yet, but things are not moving in a happy direction. And the basic point of Food Matters is that the proportions of the way that we eat are all messed up, and that's what probably has to change.
You discuss the factory farming of livestock here. Are you simply opposed to factory farming, or would you like to see us cut down on meat consumption on every level?
I would say that the answer is both. I am opposed to factory farming, and I think it's become much, much worse in the last 10 or 15 years and has grown enormously. In the last, I think it's the last 10 years, factory farming of pigs has increased by 2,000%. So that's a big number. Almost all cows in this country are raised in factories, almost all chickens, and so on. And we raise 10 billion animals a year that way. That's billion with a B. Let me just finish, because the numbers are so big, and factory farming in a way is so efficient. I mean, it's cruel, it's horrible, it's torturous, but it's efficient, that you really can't get rid of factory farming without decreasing consumption. You can't say, let's do grass-fed cows, because there's no room to do grass-fed cows, and you can't raise enough grass-fed cows to have an impact on factory-raised cows. What has to happen is that 10 billion number has to fall to 9, 8, 7, 6. I mean, pick a number, but it has to be lower, and then we can worry about being nicer to the animals. But first, we have to eat a few of them. I mean, this gets back, if you like, to the question you asked about whether I was advocating vegetarianism, and I don't, in large part because I think that many of the reasons people become vegetarians don't do them or anyone else any good. dairy and eggs are no less stressful on the environment. They're no less stressful on the animals, except that the animals are not killed quite as early in their lives. And dairy per se is not really better, quote unquote, for you than meat. You're still eating, if this is what you're worried about, you're still eating high hormone, high fat food.
So fruitarians are the only people who are
breatharians. No, I think that being a vegan is a very consistent, if difficult, position to take. I'm not a vegan. I'm not advocating that either. But I think that if you want to do all that you can do for the environment, for your body, for animals, etc., then the most consistent position is to be a vegan. I can't advocate that because I'd be hypocritical if I advocated.
Because you eat meat.
I do.
Although you're a vegetarian until 6 o'clock.
Well, I have this kind of odd. I worked out this odd deal with myself, and I think other people have worked out different deals with themselves, and that most people have some kind of, I do this. This is how I eat, and then increasingly people who need to exercise some discipline are going to have these kinds of arrangements. But my arrangement with myself is that from the time I wake up until dinner, I eat only fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and legumes. So I don't even eat white bread during the day. And then starting at dinner, I have one meal a day where I do pretty much what I want, which is normally quite indulgent, although maybe not as indulgent as it was a few years ago.